on calendar. Good evening. Welcome to the October 17th meeting of the City of San Marino Public Safety Commission. The agenda, well, let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance and then we'll talk about the agenda. So if you'll join me. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will you take the roll call?
Sure. Chair Bogue,
Here.
Vice Chair Martinson, here. Commissioner Bazell,
Present.
Commissioner Chang,
Here.
and Commissioner Pfeffer.
Here.
The agenda has been posted 72 hours prior to the meeting at the following locations: the City Hall, 2200 Huntington Drive, the Kroll Public Library at 1890 Huntington Drive, and the Stoneman Building at 1560 Pascalito Drive. The agenda is also posted on the city's website. We welcome and encourage public comments. So if there are people either here or in the joining us over the airwaves, you're more than welcome and encouraged to participate. We will accept public comments at this time on issues that are not on the agenda, and then later, as agenda items are discussed, you're more than welcome to again add your thoughts or comments or ask questions or make recommendations. Are there any public comments?
I'll give it. Oh, okay, it looks like Raymond Kwan is raising his hand. Give me a moment, Mr. Kwan. I'll unmute you.
Would you invite him in?
Yes.
There he is. Good
Can
evening.
you hear me?
We can, and thank you for joining us.
I just have a simple item on the first page of the agenda packet. The meeting time and date is accurately 6 p.m., but it says it's the first Monday. I believe it's a typo. It should be the third Monday, because I've been directing people to attend this meeting, and if they see that, they'll be mistaken. I have a second comment. I'll wait for the police report.
Thank you for pointing that out. We'll make sure that's corrected since we've moved to the third Monday. Commissioners, have any of you any item or issue you would like to inform either the public or the other commissioners of, maybe meetings you've attended or other issues? I see no one indicating that they have a report. So let's go ahead and move to item 1 on the agenda, which is the police department report. If you will take it away.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Chair and Commission, for having me this evening. You have the police department update before you. One thing I'd like to call your attention is the under traffic, the Community and Public Safety Traffic Task Force. City Council had requested that the police department and the Public Works develop a community-based group for traffic-related issues, specifically around the schools in an effort to reduce traffic. The goal of this working group is to provide a regular update to the City Council, and the group will likely be composed of San Marino School District staff, members of the Public Safety Commission, and other community members. More than likely, we'll also include police department personnel that are trained in the traffic safety. One other item that I wanted to point out was under the crime statistics portion of the report. You'll notice in one of the portions of the cells under calls for service, there's several blank portions. I mentioned this to staff after the fact. I noticed that there was blanks. You'll notice if you were to look at some of the calculations on percentages, those percentages will be off slightly. I can provide you the correct numbers if you'd like, but I believe that was sent out today by Brittany Camacho to the commission. Those are 2 items in the report that I wanted to point out. A couple things in discussing with the chief prior to his departure for a conference. He had mentioned that there might be questions related to CCWs or concealed weapon permits. So I'd if I can, touch on that slightly. We're currently in the process of doing research on the topic. It's kind of a developing as time goes on. We don't know exactly how many we will get from the community. But we've had a couple thus far. What we're currently doing is doing the research and developing policy. And part of the reason for that is that there's some concerns for overall cost and costs that we wouldn't be able to recuperate as a result of the process and the application. Some of the things that we would be faced with are the psychological examination. We would have to do that through the psychological facility that we use for our employment, and the state cost and what we get back will not cover that. So those are some things that we'll have to address. We're expecting to do the background investigation portion in-house. Part of that reason is that our background investigator that does, again, all of our hiring will not do the backgrounds for concealed weapon permits for one reason or another. And then finally, the interviews for that will also occur in-house, where we conduct an interview of the person that's applying. If there's any questions on that, I can speak to it. Otherwise, I have a couple other things I wanted to go over.
Yes, just briefly, Commissioner Pepper. So the city is requiring an applicant who wishes to carry a concealed weapon, get the permit for CCW, has to undergo a psychological examination.
That was a portion that we were considering.
Okay, I
We're-
mean,
we're-
it's still under consideration. It's not a requirement.
It's not mandated at this point.
Okay.
In developing the program, we actually reached out to multiple agencies, and unfortunately, I can say that no agency is doing it the same. I think it's kind of a new thing for a lot of different agencies, and we're trying to find a couple that are most consistent, especially the larger agencies like Pasadena Police Department. So with that, that's why a lot of the stuff is we're looking at doing in-house as far as the background and the interview, aside from the fact that our background investigator won't do it. So we're going to try and take on as much as we can in-house. We're already thinking that the background portion would actually be done by our detective bureau. And it wouldn't be as extensive a background that we do for employment. Those usually take a matter of a month to 6 weeks. So that's obviously not going to work out.
Right. I mean, it wouldn't just involve just a criminal records check. that you're printing?
No, I think we're going to check for the moral character. We're going to be having the interview portion. If anything comes up, we might follow up on some questions that we have during the interview. And even the interview questions themselves haven't been clearly established as far as what questions we might ask. That's something that we would be discussing with the chief.
So interviews with the applicant,
Yes.
with anybody else?
If there's a question or an issue that comes up during the interview process, then we might do a subsequent follow-up with someone, whether it be a neighbor or whoever it might be. If they give a referral or a reference to someone that we can speak to, of course, that person doesn't have to, they're not obligated to answer our questions, but we'll follow up.
Okay. Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Any others?
Other commissioners, nothing? Do you have a timeline for when you may have a draft or a proposal on that that we might be looking at?
I don't have one yet, but I think that and sometime this week can actually get something produced as far as a timeline, just because the chief, Commander Tebbets will both be back in, and we're actually working as a group with our range staff to kind of filter this out and come to a clear set of items that we're going to be using. So hopefully this week we can come up with a timeline, but as far as a timeline actual right now, I do not have that.
Okay, so we'll keep that subject in mind for our next meeting.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
On the topic of motors and the motor officers, I think Chief kind of touched on this before. Everything seems to be going as planned at this point. They just got back from training today. They have roughly 2 weeks left in their training process. And then the first week of November, they'll be going to their 2-week school, which I think Chief mentioned previously. So that all seems to be going well at this point. I know everybody's eager to see them out on the streets as well as we are. It'll be a relief to the officers that are trying to do traffic control. So I'm looking forward to it myself. Some of the issues that have come up recently with regard to traffic concerns, we had a vehicle collision the other evening, which was on the 14th. Actually, it was in the early morning hours at about 4 a.m. The car was on Duarte Road near Rose and Lorraine. Between the two, vehicle actually hit the curb, struck a tree, flipped over, and caught fire. Thankfully, the one and only occupant in the car was not injured. There were no other people standing by that were injured. No houses were affected as far as the car traveling into a house or anything like that. However, in talking to some of the residents, they do have some concerns with traffic in the area. So we received a request from one of the residents as recent as today that we had some communication with my records as well to see what we can do as far as looking into it a little bit closer to see what can be done with the area. And I did mention that this would probably be a good venue for them to come to and address it if they're interested to talk about traffic concerns and that, because it would possibly involve an engineer and some recommendations on changes to the roadway. If you're familiar with the area where Doherty is, if you come off Doherty from San Gabriel and you head into the city, it's you could pick up some good speed in that area. And if it's late at night, it's fairly dark in the area if you're not paying attention, or if you're under the influence, which this subject was, then you could easily continue on right straight through it and then run into a house potentially. So there are some concerns. So we think we're going to need to address in the very near future with that. The subject on that morning was arrested and is currently facing DUI charges at this point. So there'll be more to come on that, but I just wanted to make sure I brought it to your attention.
Can I ask a question on that?
Sure.
Just to clarify, the intersection was Doherty and Roses?
Doherty and Rose.
Thank
you. The collision where the actual person lives in the area, but the collision occurred on Doherty. It would be just, it's kind of on an angle, but it would be just like northeast or northwest of Rose. You might have also heard that we had a false reporting of an active shooter at the high school last week that occurred on the 13th. We received the call just before noon. So some circumstances or some items that came along with that. We received a call from a person that provided a name. They also provided a phone number that was logged into our dispatch, our buyer dispatch. All the units that were on duty that day, our detectives as well as patrol, all responded immediately to the high school. From the time that they were dispatched, they were at the high school within 2 minutes or less. We had myself, I actually went into dispatch to confirm the call and what was coming out. At the same time, the phone number that was provided was being checked by our detective sergeant through a law enforcement program that we have. And we kind of quickly determined as they were actually responding that number did not seem legitimate, as in the number had been used where we discovered it was involved in other investigations where there was a false reporting to law enforcement. So things were not really adding up. In addition, the initial report from the person calling said that there were roughly 10 kids stuck in room 101 that had been shot. They described the suspect as a male Hispanic wearing dark clothing and carrying an AR-15 style rifle. So when the dispatcher asked additional questions, very basic stuff like where are you at, what's the address, the caller, they basically ended the call. So there was that. The officers responding have maps for the all schools, which are color coded and have the room numbers on them. They kind of questioned the room. They looked at the map, noticed there is no 101. They asked the dispatcher confirmed that with school staff over phone that there is no room 101. And we met, our officers met on scene with the school staff, put a team together and for search teams, actually at least two teams, and began to search the school. And they went basically room to room, made contact with some of the teachers, looked into the rooms, and cleared it quickly. Out of an abundance of caution and in order to address the district as a whole, as opposed to just the high school, the officers then went out to the other schools in the district, made contact there and confirmed that there wasn't a room that somehow got misconstrued as 101 at a different school versus the high school. And then to keep our private schools in interest, they tend to sometimes feel left out because the district messaging will go out to the district, but not include the schools like St. Felicitas and St. Edmunds. We went out to those as well, just to make sure they knew what was going on. During the course of it, because of what we found out and the information that we gathered, there was no need for a lockdown at that time. It was actually cleared quicker than a lockdown could be put in place for the most part. They were on scene within 2 minutes, made contact with the staff within 2 more minutes, and then we're searching the school already. And you may or may not have heard if you have, if you receive alerts or have people that you know from other cities. Monrovia was another, I wouldn't say a victim, but they received a similar or same call. It actually came from, we believe, the same caller, same number, etc. They cleared all their smaller elementary schools fairly quickly, but they spent a little more time with their high school because they were just unsure. And I think they had a bigger area to check and didn't have maybe some of the stuff that we had at the time of our call and investigation. So we're going to continue to follow up on what we have, but it looks like a lot of these, if you're familiar with them, they're VoIP or voice over internet type of phone number. They usually go to an off-site location, sometimes out of country, out of state, and that's the challenge, is getting the person. So the key part of this is that everybody was safe. We were able to check it, that the officers all had the tools that they need to do the job is from MDCs in the cars, the protective equipment, and we're able to make contact and check quickly. So everything as best as it could, it went as planned. So the final item that I have, is there any questions on that incident?
Commissioner? Yes.
That's one question.
Commissioner
Was that Thursday, October 13th?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. I think you probably already answered this question. My question is going to be whether you reached out to other cities in the area to find out if this was a coordinated effort of some sort. You said something about Monrovia, got a similar call. My son goes to school in Pasadena and his school had a bomb threat that same day, but it came in by email. So I just didn't want to make sure that you guys were reaching out to Pasadena and other surrounding cities to make sure you're sharing this information with each other.
That's an excellent question. And yes, we did. So Angie Gonzalez, our record supervisor, made her aware of what we had on the call. And so on her side, what she did is she actually emailed everyone that she has in the LA County contact list that she has. So
Does that include private schools?
no,
The
I
bomb
don't.
threat was at a private school in Pasadena. So I just want to make
Yeah,
sure.
the JRIC, which the chief has mentioned, was this is a joint regional information center. So our sergeant, when he was checking the phone number, he actually made a report to the JRIC, which is it's kind of a not a clearinghouse, but they'll receive the information, they share it with other agencies when it's pertinent. We did that, but to your question, as far as other private schools, I can't guarantee that. I just know that Angie Gonzalez was able to put it out to various law enforcement agencies, and we did get some response from that. The way we actually found out about Monrovia was we were already clearing our call. And since we have a scanner and dispatch, the dispatcher heard something about Monrovia and then the airship was going up, the helicopter. So then we reached out to Monrovia and said, what do you have going on? And then that's when we discovered like, well, the call you got is the same call we got. So
For whatever it's worth, I don't know if it's something you want to look into in Pasadena. On that same day, there was a bomb threat and they had to do a canine search of the entire school. And I mean, I don't know. It came in by email, so it sounds like a different actor, but some way.
we can definitely check. Just like you had mentioned, Sergeant Qureshi is the one that's in charge of Detective Bureau, but that'd be good for him because I mean he goes to these different terrorist meetings pretty much on a weekly basis and then regular training. So he would definitely have a contact at Pasadena to reach out to. And what school was it at?
Polytechnic.
Yeah, we'll take a look at that. The last item I had was the contact list. I wanted to see if there was, I guess that's being established by the commission and we're just trying to clarify. I think Brittany Camacho is working on that list. If there's any questions about it, I think the one thing she mentioned was a text message. And I wanted to see if there's anything I can do to figure out what might be needed to get that portion cleared up and finished off for us.
Yeah, no, we're just working with it offline, but what we were doing, just as the commission is aware, is in terms of the police department and similar to the fire department, but police department has more channels of communication, what they all are. I mean, obviously we know 911, we know 3720, but there's also an Instagram, there's an option sign for Nix. So there's a couple other ones, and one that the officer's talking about is the text number that the police department has, if in case you see something, but with the idea, the caveat being that it is not monitored. So if you did have to text something, you would have to say, hey, I'm assuming 3720, there's something weird going on. Can I text you a photo? Okay, we'll look at it now. And so we're just working on getting to draft that document and then we'll share it with the rest of the commission once it's ready. But and then I think we are also today, we kind of have an aha about other programs the department offers, such as, I don't know the official name, but the whole keys for your house in the event you get locked out. So you don't have to, keep it with neighbors or under a rock. Similar programs. I know Chief has the we'll change your fire alarm thing. So kind of just a quick little, did you know sheet that, for me, I could take to my neighbors and in my neighborhood of like, hey, this is what we're doing. And by the way, for public safety, be aware of this. So
Sounds-
no question asked. She's been amazing.
Perfect.
And tell her thank you.
Sounds good. That's all I have. Are there any questions?
Other commissioners? Any comments, questions?
Just one quick, another quick question, Commander. The radar trailer?
Oh, trailers, plural.
Right, they were both stolen the same day?
The
Same
items,
person?
well, not the trailers, but the
Batteries,
yeah,
sorry, the
critical-
batteries from the trailers.
the critical components were, but my understanding at least last week, we're waiting on the parts still or the particular items for it. I was hoping that we could try to get them deployed back out this week, but I don't know if it's going to be towards the end of the week or first of next week, maybe.
But any clue who did it
No,
or same person or?
no, we were so don't put put this down on record or anything, but no. I would like to put a camera on them, because it can be done. We have the flock cameras, and that would have been helpful. And so the first question I asked was where these were at, and was there a flock camera nearby or one of our cameras? So unfortunately, the answer is no. So we don't have any direct leads right now, but we're doing our best with it.
Appreciate
We'll
that.
get them out as soon as possible.
Might I ask if you've heard from other nearby agencies if they've had a similar problem?
In talking to the companies, nothing's come up recently. No reports of other stuff been stolen. I was pleasantly surprised for a long time that ours held up as long as they did, because they're nice and brand new, and I figured maybe it's just San Marino, we're gonna be lucky, but it does happen. I went to a presentation for these cameras and these trailers, and basically they basically either warranty it or you'll try to get insurance on it, but it happens from time, or graffiti. They'll either try to damage it, they'll steal items, if there's items of value, if there's copper, that type of stuff. The way we're going to try to combat this for any future occurrences, not only the consideration of possible camera, is a locking system to keep them out of any of those parts. But locks can be cut, but we're going to try and still beef up the security a little bit.
I believe that Dr. Kwan had indicated that he'd like to take public comment here.
Yes.
Would you invite him in, please?
Yes, just requested that he unmute.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, my comment is, I have a couple comments. One is about page 8, the crime statistics, specifically the part 1 crimes and burglary. I attended the city council candidates forum a couple of weeks ago, and I can't remember who said it. I think it was moderator Mitch Lehman who asked a question for all the candidates to talk about the rise in burglaries. And I thought he said something like 66% rise since last year. And I was very alarmed about that because, I try to keep a close tabs on burglaries, and I had no idea that was happening. So I took a look at the statistics, and I believe some corrections are in order. For example, the residential burglaries last year were 23 and went to 36. This is 57%, and that checks out to my calculator. But the line below it, it says commercial. It went from 6 last year to 7, but it says there's a negative 16.66 change, and it should be a positive 16.66. Another number that I have problem with is the conglomerate total burglaries. It went from 29 to 48. To my count, it should be 43, which would make, instead of a 66% increase, a 48% increase. I would like to point that out, and if corrections can be made, because it went out to the whole, to the whole forum, and they're quoting numbers that I took interest in because they mentioned it, and I went like, oh, I don't think these numbers are right. If it went up that much, I don't have any idea it went up that much, other than if you attend this meeting and listen to the police crime report. But my sources of information on the burglars are two: the city manager's email blast on Thursdays, and the San Marino Tribune SMPD crime report. And it's always the same thing where you get a data point. I've lived here for 29 years, and I don't know every street next to me. And I certainly don't know the addresses of every street around me. So when I hear a crime, I don't really know where that is. And so if it's a pattern or it's getting closer to me, I just have little dots and I can connect the dots. So it's very hard to relate to it. My wife, Miriam, has been pointing out that the crime mapping thing doesn't work. And, I talked to the chief of California Metro Patrol today, who told me some part of Pasadena, they've had 10 burglaries in 2 weeks. And when there's a wave going to a region, it's kind of nice to know. So I would like to know if there's some way we can improve that process. I also noticed, we're reading the SMPD crime report in the Tribune, that they're leaving the amount of losses. And I thought we, a few years ago, pointed out that's kind of inviting criminals to hit us. I mean, this week is this $18,000 loss. $1,090 loss. The week before, $20,000 loss. And I was talking to former alternate Commissioner Zilla Tobiano today. And she was pointing out that she's seen texts of criminals in prison, and they're sharing these type of crime reports from local neighborhoods. And so the criminals are milking this to see what is a nice, rich neighborhood. And it's very enticing to say loss of 18,000, loss of 20,000. And I thought there was some kind of agreement that we would start leaving those numbers out to not entice criminals to come because of the profitability. So I think that's it for my comments.
Let me just recap, if I may, to be sure we got your point. One was, can we find a more effective way or a more meaningful way of advising community members of concentrations or areas where burglaries are taking place? I think that was your first point. That's what I got out of it. Well, we can't hear you. Can you? Hold on just 1 second, if you will. I think the system may have failed us.
I asked him to unmute, so.
Okay,
Okay, now we can hear.
I only get scattered data points. There's no way for me to analyze it or understand that there's a trend. I think you shouldn't leave it to the public to figure it out. If there's just a paragraph saying it's trending this way, or it seems to be concentrating in this area, it would alert the neighbors to be more vigilant, because it's basically how we need to fight the crime, is be more vigilant. But the way the data comes to me, I can't put anything together. It'd be useful to have some kind of trending.
Fine, we've got some notes on that, on your comment.
Thank you.
And your second point was, I'm sorry, I wrote part of it down.
The amount of the losses are being reported.
Yeah, we benefit from advising people of the size of losses.
Yeah, I thought we had I thought there was a kind of a notion to not publish those, to not invite further crime.
Thank you. We've got note of that, and we'll refer both those questions to the police department, and we'll see if we can't get an answer by our next meeting. And if we get one beforehand, maybe we can publish it in the Tribune or something.
I can respond at least to the statistics. I mean, we
Oh,
kind of,
great.
yeah, we kind of touched on that, but there are a series of areas that I think what happened was when these were being worked on by the staff, they submitted a working copy before they actually completed it. Again, there's gaps in the information that's provided, and some of the stuff, like Mr. Kwan actually noted, is that some of the percentages need to be recalculated. So I don't disagree with that. One of the things that he mentioned was, how do you track, what's happening? It seems like these huge spikes. This is similar to what we discussed recently at a neighborhood watch meeting, is that if you look through, in certain months like April, there's actually a 0. So that's the low month. And then the high month would be August, when there's 8 that occurred or that we noted. So there's these highs and lows throughout, and then all of a sudden you'll feel like there's a spike when you have one that's an 8 month, so let's say, versus the April month. So the other part of it is that on the map, he's absolutely right as far as the online map. That's been down, but that's because of a software provider that we have. We just barely finished the final meeting today with Sergeant Qureshi. It's the one that actually provides the link between our map and the statistics. It has to go through our CAT RMS, which is all of our statistics. So it has taken a while, but we meet on a monthly basis with them to get things going. And unfortunately, we're at the mercy of the software company. So we plan to have that up soon as well. We're probably in the next couple of weeks before we go with IT and complete that portion. So finally,
Excuse me, before you leave that subject, do any of the commissioners have a question? I do. But my question really has to do with your patrol procedures. Now, obviously, you have patrol plans. And, you're sure your officers are not just wandering around randomly. If you have in fact identified areas which seem to be targeted, are you able to adjust your patrol plans or operations to to increase your visibility in those areas?
Absolutely. I mean, in the past and what we're looking at going forward is additional hires of people coming in. So the patrol officers can respond to the calls for service throughout the day, as well as doing the, saturation of what we're talking about. But to get more people out there and being visible, we actually look at hiring more people on as far as like overtime during those times of days that we find it most prevalent. At the neighborhood watch meeting this weekend, one of the things that we touched on was the fact that we looked at what days of the week, and oddly enough, with the reports that we got, Wednesday was one of the days where it seems most prominent. At least that was where we had the most reports of burglaries. And then the time of day was between like 2 in the afternoon till like midnight, and they were sporadic. As far as where they're occurring in the city, that actually is spread out almost perfectly amongst the two sides of the city. We split the city on a patrol beat of 2 different beats, almost perfectly down the middle. The west side of the city on the northwest and the east side of the city on the north side have saturation of these burglaries almost, not, I wouldn't say identical, but they're spread out, just very similar in nature. So basically we can just increase patrol in those areas to try to get the biggest impact and be visible. But case in point is that more often than not, when they see a patrol car, they're going to avoid and just delay until the patrol car is no longer there. So we've considered other stuff too, as far as undercover or UC cars, because we need to be nondescript. So we're working on that. One of the things we've gotten new vehicles. Mr. Gutierrez knows we're working on cars so that we can get the detectives out in cars that don't look like police cars. So we have a couple of those in the works, and hopefully that will help. Also, the detectives have a tracker program that we're going to try for putting out basically items that we'll see if we can find people that are interested in stealing stuff and obviously track it. A lot of other departments are doing that as well. But again, that's for property theft. That may not be the people that are actually looking to burglarize a home. So there's several things that we're looking to do to try and combat that.
Would you be kind enough to include in your report next month what you've accomplished? You say you're looking at, so could you give us an update? Thank
Absolutely.
you. And I'm sorry, I interrupted you. You said you had a second thing you were going to. You had one more thing you were going to.
If I did, sir, I
comment.
forgot.
All right. Okay. Yes, Commissioner.
Is it appropriate time to ask a question about the police report this month?
Sure.
Okay, I noticed under burglary prevention that there was an email sent out about best practices or something like that, and I just was curious, what form was that sent out on?
You said best practices.
Yeah, I can pull up the report, the memo. It was something to the effect of burglary prevention tips were sent out to the community, and I just wasn't sure where that was.
If it's in the report, I would just have to find where it is in the report specifically. But when we send stuff out to the community, much like what you're talking about, typically it's through Nixle. When we're sending out notifications, or we're doing it through social media. So I would have to see what area.
It's on page 5, second to last paragraph. The police department recently sent out notifications to the community regarding burglary prevention tips, proper lighting, alarm system, surveillance cameras, etc.
I would have to double check, but more than likely that one was on Instagram.
Okay,
Typically,
that's what I'm
yeah,
curious, where-
typically we'll put it there and or Nixle, but we try to reserve Nixle for more critical type,
in the
incidents.
moment. Okay,
So
no,
probably Instagram.
thank you.
Thank you. If there are no other questions or comments, can I have a motion to receive? And I get the proper words to accept and file this report. Mr. Chang, second. Mr. Pfeffer. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Sure, and you got it covered.
I did.
Opposed.
Okay.
You'll get it.
You can second the next one.
Let's move on to the fire department report. Chief Rueda.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. As you can see, from my lack of a uniform, taking on a different role on October 5th, the council appointed me as the acting city manager. That was after agreement was reached with the previous city manager to come to a resolution about her departure. The city has treated me very well, and as have you, as have the residents, and there was no way I would say no when asked to help out. So I'm not interested necessarily in the full-time position, but do my best to step in and do the best job I can. And I do have a good team behind me with the department heads. They do a good job, and then a good partner in the police chief that really helps ensure our residents are safe. I do plan to come back to council next month to ask them to appoint Chief Mark Donenville as acting fire chief. That does require the council to take action, so I think it'll be a great experience, and he's going to love driving in every day to work as opposed to the 10 days a month. He works shift work, so it's always a transition to go from shift work to business hours, and be a good experience, and good experience to work with the commission and other department heads on issues. We did, I've mentioned to the commission in the past that we used to receive well over 100 applicants for each position that we advertised for. I think the last recruitment we had, I think we had 6 or 7, something to that effect. We've luckily picked 2 diamonds in the rough out of that small number, and we're putting them through backgrounds right now to hopefully fill our last 2 vacancies. So they go through a rigorous screening process to make sure we're getting good candidates. As you read in the report, we finally received our new rescue ambulance. It was years in the making. Not so much the making, it was the recalls on the Dodge chassis that just caused us just headaches. One was a fuel pump, and the second was lug nuts. And Dodge would not release any other truck chassis until they cleared the issue. It was finally cleared, and we took receipt. We're planning a christening push-in ceremony on November 12th, and you're all invited. That's at 10 a.m. at the fire station. I just wanted to touch on the strike team. So we are just starting our fire season in Southern California, and we saw a glimpse of it last month in September when we had a combination of a heat wave and then fire conditions with offshore breezes, and Hemet turned out to be ground zero. There was a request for really any available engines on our engine, although we have our own staffing issues and people had to work extra to protect San Marino. Our engine went that night and was deployed amongst other Southern California resources to help protect their community. The mutual aid system is undergoing stress right now. As soon as they were released from Hemet, they drove, I think, 7 hours to the mosquito fire in Placer County and were immediately put to work up there. So it is, our system is stretched. Cal OES is our California Office of Emergency Services is the entity that manages mutual aid, but they're stressed, and they're looking at trying to develop innovative ways to make this system continue to work. And it really works by neighbor helping neighbor. And when we can, we try to help out the rest of our state. That concludes my report, unless you have any questions.
Commissioner Pfeffer?
No.
Commissioner Martin?
Just a clarifying question. I noticed that the overtime has gone up 100% since last year. Is that a concern or just kind of?
I think it's mostly due this month, that when we looked at it to strike team.
Thank you.
So when we send people out, we're basically paying double, but we do get reimbursed by the state.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bozell?
I don't have any questions. I just wanted to say thank you for stepping up and serving the city in a different capacity for as long as that will be.
Thank you.
Commissioner Jang? Do we have a a motion to accept and file this report? It's your chance. Have a motion for,
Sorry.
have a second? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I believe you have an additional report at excuse me, we have a public works report next, and then we'll come back to the emergency operations plan.
Good evening, Chair and Commission. I know you guys got my report in front of you. I just wanted to highlight a few things. So All American is still continuing with our street rehab. They are currently on Sierra Madre, doing curb and gutter. They were supposed to be done this past week, but the weather kind of put a damper on that. So they will be done with the curb and gutter on Thursday. So you'll see all the barricades and that'll be out of there. After we conclude the street rehab, we will have our sidewalk replacement program. Staff is currently looking at all of our sidewalks citywide, and we're getting the more severe lifts and cracks in a number of different streets citywide. We do have San Marino Center still under construction. They are on schedule right now. So that's still going. As far as our maintenance activities, we installed a new booth, a ticket booth at Lacey Park. Our guys had to pour some concrete to get the foundation right. We ran new power, new lights, be a little more comfortable for our staff on the weekends over there. And we did paint some new stop legends and put a temporary stop sign on the alley between Valhaven and San Gabriel. It was in bad shape. Mr. Martinson brought it to our attention. Worked out. We have that done. And we also are completing the median that got taken out by a vehicle some time ago. We have new lights, new irrigation, a new tree, and we are working on a monument to put back up there to, as you enter into the city, that we're hoping that'll be up by the end of the week. That concludes my report unless you guys have any other questions, comments, or concerns.
Commissioners?
What's on Terrace's deal?
Yeah, that's still in the works. Director Newman is in contact with them, trying to get them to come out and do a presentation for you guys. You know, I get dates and dates are not working. So I really have nothing to report on that. Unfortunately, I don't want to give you guys false information because they just keep procrastinating. Again, Director Newman is working with them to try to get it out. I mean, he's frustrated. We're all frustrated with them right now.
And second question is, I know I asked you this last month and the answer may be exactly the same, but what's the status or the schedule for the playground replacement at the park?
So Director Newman is working on a design and build with that right now. We're just trying to see what route we're going to take with getting the community involved on getting a playground built. We don't want to design something that's not going to work for the community. We're going to try to get some people involved to help with the design process.
Is there a target install date?
I couldn't give you a target date. I mean, I'll definitely get some more information, report back to you guys next month with a time frame.
May I interrupt you? I was just on that same subject. Do you need help from either the city council or this group or someone to get if you're looking for trying to create some kind of a study group, do you need help in finding and creating that group.
Absolutely. That'll be very helpful.
Let's see if we can find a way to assist you there.
Thank you.
Um,
And I'd be happy to be on a group if that's what it takes.
that was kind of what I had in mind. And maybe you might want to sit down and give some thought to others that you know are users. And we should probably reach out beyond just a handful of friends, but if we could put together a group of half a dozen people that could give input, then maybe we could get this thing going.
Chairman,
Excellent.
if I might, is the Recreation Commission involved in that planning process at all, or the design?
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
so they're already on
So
board.
you might want to contact them, see if we can't just get
Get the ball
something
rolling.
happening. Thank you. Commissioner Chang? Mr. Pfeffer?
Oh, no, just a thank you. Just a resident reached out to me about some overhanging tree branches at one of the intersections in the city, so I reported it to Public Works, and I do appreciate the prompt response.
Absolutely. Thank you.
No, similar thing. Been using the app to submit things and it's worked out great. Really appreciate it. And that can the photos and the GPS coordinates of this is where it is. Saves you guys time, makes it easy.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very helpful.
Two quick questions. You were referring to the interest or the entrance to the city in the project. Is that the West Drive project you're referring to here?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And I guess I'm going to ask a side question to the acting city manager. The fire station bathroom remodel project. Are you comfortable with what's happening?
Yes, I am.
Thank you.
I just wanted to note briefly, Councilwoman Shepherd Rome just provided a comment, I guess, in the chat that there is noting that there's a longstanding Lacey Park committee that she thinks would be good to participate in the playground project.
So she would prefer, she's saying she would prefer that we delegate that to
think-
her
I
longstanding.
I don't want to speak for her, but that's
Can you invite her to speak?
yes, if I can ask her to unmute if she would like to comment.
Sure. Thank you, gentlemen and gentlewomen, commissioners, as well as staff. I just wanted to make you aware that there is or has been a longstanding Lacey Park Committee for a number of decades that oversees changes and improvements to the park. And it has not been active this last year, or in part because we haven't had any regular meetings, community meetings regarding park matters with the change of the director and the status of having an interim. And so it would not be at all to replace your input or the input of the Rec Commission, but it would be nice to use existing committees to get input on as plans develop for the playground equipment, so we can avoid some of the mistakes that have been made in the past.
How can we reach them?
I can work with staff. I have the emails from all the past years, or at least the past 3 years. So I can get that group together and the emails for those people to whomever you would like me to work with.
Well, I think Commissioner Bozell is going to be interested in this area, regardless of whether it's led by us or someone else.
Right.
So can you share that information with him? If there's a leader to that group, he can then make contact and offer to help with either inspiration or whatever it takes to get this done.
Right. Well, he would be an excellent liaison from that group if we have a meeting with staff to discuss some of the possibilities, and he could bring it to you before it gets to council. That would be ideal. And it'd be nice to get the newly formed or reformed rec input as well, because I know that the rec department uses the equipment there as well during the summer particularly. So we have a lot of interested parties, but it'd be great to get some input from those groups. And it could all go through Jeff, since this will go through you for your recommendation to us.
I think our role it would be to inspire and encourage and see if we can't move the project along, get it done so the little kids have a place to play. So thank you very much. So Jeff will watch for some kind of communication from you, and thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments, any other public comments? If not, do we have a motion to receive and to accept and file?
So moved.
Was Ellen Chang
You got it.
Okay.
or
Okay.
over here, somebody, all in favor, say aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That brings us to the presentation on the subject of the emergency operations plan. Acting city manager or
Good evening again, commissioners. What you have before you in your packet, which made it almost 400 pages, was our city's emergency operations plan. The state has a guide of updating this every 3 years. It is one of two plans that every city should have, and actually one of two plans that we must have if we anticipating securing reimbursement following a disaster. There's 4 parts to this plan. Part 1 is the basic plan. It includes our organization, our laws, and our city succession. Part 2 is our emergency organization functions. Part 3 is an appendix, which is confidential because it includes phone numbers of, for example, your phone numbers. It includes the council, other city staff. It also includes energy dependent residents that we have in our city. Part 4 is annexes, which are specific plans for specific types of events that may impact our city. FEMA has 16 types of disasters that we could potentially see in our nation. We're susceptible to about 10 of those. We won't see a hurricane. We won't see a snowstorm. We won't see a volcano, but we may see a variety of others. The tsunami, which we could see in our region, we won't see in San Marino either. But this actually does, this plan does provide the overall operational concepts that we use to manage a disaster in our city. And it is consistent with what's being used in other cities and in our operational area, which is the County of Los Angeles. There is a regular method of contacting the County of Los Angeles for resources. The state is then further divided up into regions. And then if need be, we would, our requests would go through the county to the state of California to help us in the event of a disaster. This was approved by the council on October 12th, but that was following a review by our disaster council. In our city, we have a disaster council that has the responsibility to review our emergency plans and our mutual aid agreements. And our disaster council met on September 16th. That was council members Gretchen Shepherd Rami and Stephen Wong. And they reviewed our plan and recommended that it be sent to council for approval. In the past, the state of California used to review cities' plans like this. They no longer perform that function. But we did send this plan to the County of Los Angeles, which reviewed it for consistency with their plan and for meeting the requirements for emergency plans. We also sent it to our disaster management area coordinator. She reviewed our plan and both agreed the plan was complete. well situated for our city. And I mentioned to the council when I presented this that I had heard before, I think it was Eisenhower said, once the battle starts, plans are really useless. But the planning that goes into putting these together and secondarily, they really do serve as our curriculum for teaching the department heads and the rest of our city staff on how we are to operate in the event of a disaster, how things actually work. So the plan may sit on a shelf for and gather dust, but the contents of the plan are actually utilized every month in emergency operations training for our executives, including this month on Wednesday. We're doing an earthquake exercise with all city departments, and then the executive team will participate in a training and exercise with earthquakes as a topic. We would have done it on the Great Shakeout Day, which is Thursday, except about half of the police and fire department are at a training exercise on that day. So we moved it to Wednesday, and looking forward to that exercise. And I am available for any questions that you might have on our emergency operations plan.
Commissioner Mozelle?
It's a big document, so I mean, I've scrolled through it and scrolling through it again, just for my own edification. Were there major changes from the 2021 plan?
One of the things that happens with our plan is it's constantly undergoing update. Just prior to the start of the pandemic, we actually had a draft pandemic plan, but it wasn't based on COVID. It was based on what we thought would be some other type of influenza. The advent of COVID really caused us to accelerate the approval of that plan. Actually, our mayor, Gretchen Shepherd Romey at the time, really worked with us to put together and get that plan in place. But we've also developed an earthquake specific annex. We've developed a emergency communications annex. So the plan's always undergoing update. So that when we get to the sort of the final exam, this thing, a lot of it's been done already. It's updating contact numbers, working with Edison to find our energy dependent residents and any other directives that come out of the state. So because we keep it up, it wasn't that heavy of a lift.
Commissioner Chang?
Well, I just have one question on the
Microphone.
disaster council. On the disaster council, notice it's part of the municipal code on who's in it. I guess this was determined before the formation of the Public Safety Commission. Is that correct? So would it be worthwhile maybe to have a representative from the Public Safety Commission?
I think I would certainly be open to that, but that's not my call. I could certainly discuss that with the mayor. I think it's a great idea. It does seem odd.
Yeah.
But this disaster council is actually, I looked at many other cities, and they have a similar makeup of their disaster councils. But our city having a public safety commission, I think it would be appropriate to include.
Yeah, because
a
I
member.
noticed this was formed before our commission was formed.
Correct.
Yeah. That's all.
Commissioner Pfeffer?
No, thank you for the report. It's very thorough.
Commissioner Martin?
No comment.
I have to apologize. I've been going through this document. I'm trying to find the organizational structures, supposedly on page 63, but this document, it doesn't have page 63. It has, it's numbered based on how many total pages. My real question is, when you meet in the case of a disaster, I assume you're using the same approach that was developed nationally and through fire departments, and you have people assigned to various duties. You meet in the facility that's immediately behind the city hall. Am I correct on that?
Yes, to both.
And I know you were attempting to upgrade some of your equipment. And that was, I believe, last year, if I'm right. So can you just quickly describe the team that would be in the room and managing a disaster?
So the emergency operations plan follows the National Incident Management System, which establishes basic protocols and assignments that are basically followed across our nation by Emergency Operations Center. So every EOC in California will be operating virtually under the same protocols. And and in our city, like many other general law cities, we have an emergency services coordinator. That would be me today. And that person is responsible for
Under which hat?
city manager. City manager is actually the authority during emergencies. Under the city manager, we also have an operations section, finance section, logistics section, planning section, and a variety of other tasks underneath those. We have trained the executive team many times to take on those assignments. We have had some turnover, which has prompted retraining of people, but I always try to remind our executives, because there's a lot of nervousness reporting to an EOC, particularly for an exercise where their lack of experience or knowledge may be uncovered. So I like to share with them that the EOC becomes a place for us to meet and get oriented to what's happening in our city, start to make priorities, and then start to make decisions about where we're going to place our limited resources, and then to start requesting additional help. So to try to ease some of the tension of those that don't normally operate in the incident command system and NIMS, and, oh no, I'm going to be outed. I don't know. There's 394 pages. I try to calm their nerves by saying, this is a place we meet. We get develop the situation, we get oriented to what's happening, and we are in a place where we have people that can make decisions. And if we have some tools to help us, develop our situational awareness and our situation status for the city, and protocols for where we call for help. And that seems to ease their tension a little bit, because it's, I think it can be very daunting for people that come to an EOC, and that's not what they normally do.
So would it be safe to say that most of the operational area leaders are existing city department heads? For
Yes.
example, the finance area might be headed by the finance director, and
Yes, if we have a disaster that requires, and we have various levels of opening the EOC, but if we're operating at a level one where all hands on deck, I can't think of more important financial things that are taking place than helping to abate the emergency. So we are counting on the department heads, but we also ask them to bring their seconds, their managers, when we conduct training. So in the event that person doesn't show up, the department head, somebody is put in their place.
great. Well, thank you. We need a motion to receive and file the 2022 City of San Marino Emergency Operations Plan.
So moved.
Second somewhere?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. We've received the minutes of the preceding meeting of September 19th. Are there any changes or corrections that anyone would like to make? If not, we have a motion to approve the minutes?
I move.
And a second?
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Are there any written communications or public writings that we need to distribute at this point? I'm not aware of any other than those that were included with the agenda. Are there suggestions or requests for items to be placed on a future agenda? The agenda setting typically takes place the week before our meeting. So should any commissioner have an item that they'd like to have added to the agenda, if you would let myself or the vice chair know, or for that matter, let Chief Incontro know. He normally coordinates that activity. If there's no other action or activity or questions, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all very much. Thank you to our three department heads and to our public who have joined us. And we look forward to seeing you next month.